Live streaming is on.
Okay, let's see. This is stupid. Now we're in. Okay. Now we're in. I'm sorry to all. The connection said we were in like 6 minutes ago, but I checked on YouTube and we didn't let us in, so we had to drop the connection and go back. So apologies for that. And again, apologies, Charlie.
All right.
This was really weird. That had never happened. Again, guys, it was saying live on the right corner, so it's really weird. But anyway, hello, Charlie. How are you?
I'm fine. Again, I'm still fine.
Fine. 5 minutes ago, he was fine. I just know he's fine again.
Still fine.
With us, all of you, again. Sorry, we missed 5 minutes. The amazing Charlie Adlard, my dear friend Charlie Adlard. So I'm going to repeat all over again. I'm not going to ask again how are you, because you said it before, because you're fine 5 minutes ago.
Twice already, yeah. That's what you're getting.
We were talking just the part you guys missed. We were talking about the things we missed, hanging out with friends. Charlie was talking about, getting together with his friends for Zoom and hanging out. Is there any beer parties while you guys get together?
No, we don't really do that. I do find that sort of stuff a bit pointless. I don't know, because the best place for me to talk to people is where I am at the moment, which is in one bit of my studio. I'm literally talking to you on my iMac, which is obviously where I work half the time. I've got my Cintiq just here and all that sort of stuff. So it's a kind of a working environment anyway, but it's where the best connectivity I can get. The Wi-Fi, my hub is literally just here. So it makes sense to do, I got a nice comfy ergonomic chair here, so that's okay. But yeah, to sit there and drink copiously just seems weird.
Yeah.
the right setting. If I was reclined, on my sofa in the living room, I might do that more. But there's the connectivity. We live in an old house, which is got thick stone walls and everything, which is terrible for Wi-Fi. So we've always got problems. But we're building a new house, so we'll have beautiful Wi-Fi flooding through it one day when it's finished.
Amazing. The other day I was talking to Greg Raka, and he was explaining that even the time difference is horrible for that, because he was like, okay, one of my friends is in the East Coast and I'm in the West Coast, and he says, hey, let's get together, and we have a drink once a week.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what time is for you? Like, for me it's for like 5 or something. And Greg was like saying, for me that's 2 p.m. I'm not going to start drinking at 2 p.m.
Yeah. Well, we're okay in the UK. There's no time difference here. We're all on the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Do you remember the last movie you went to the cinemas to watch before this started?
I do. Yes, it was The Lighthouse, I think. Myself and my eldest son, we both went to see The Lighthouse. So we saw a very, very odd movie just before we all got locked down. Yeah.
What did you think about it?
I loved it. I love those sort of films. I mean, I really liked. I'm trying to think of the name of the filmmaker. I've forgotten his name, but the guy. Anyway, I really enjoyed his previous movie, The Witch. I thought that was really good as well. Is it Eggers something?
Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers, that's it. Yes.
I just googled it. Don't worry.
Oh, well done.
It wasn't me and my amazing memory. No, I just googled it.
So he's a very interesting filmmaker. So it was.
Did you like The Witch or The Lighthouse better, or just the same?
God, I think I prefer The Witch just because it was. I mean, I love The Lighthouse. Don't get me wrong. I think The Witch was just because I do like a good horror movie, and I do like a good subtle horror movie, and that was as subtle as they come. And the bit at the end with the goat is just really creepy, and that stayed with me. I mean, The Lighthouse has stayed with me, but I think The Lighthouse, ironically, I felt was a bit more light-hearted. I mean, there were fart jokes in it.
Oh, compared to The Witch.
Yeah.
Compared to everything else, I don't think it's lighthearted. But if you compare it to The Witch, just those two, I absolutely agree. It is. Fart jokes.
Yes, exactly. The Witch was really intense, and The Lighthouse just slightly, just because of the humour, was slightly less intense. Obviously it gets pretty intense at the end.
I love them both. I think Eggers is a new voice that we needed in horror, and that was also what I'm going to ask you. Of course, you just said you like horror, but there's all kinds of horror around, and I fucking sorry, my language is. You're allowed to curse if you want to.
No, I'm not.
And I hate the gore like humor. If you know what humor, I consider humor because I laugh. I'm sorry, but that kind of horror that, like the guts all around, blood and all that. I cannot find that as horror. I just find it as funny because, like, let me see what limb they cut now. You know what I mean? Well, so you're saying that you prefer the kind of subtle horror would be like.
Oh God, absolutely. Ironically, probably my favorite horror movie of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing. '60s, both black and white, both from the '60s, or something like The Shining, or Halloween, or trying to think of my other favorite, but just those, four. They all just Alien. They all just literally
Alien, exactly.
The imagination. I was literally. It's kind of interesting. I was listening to this podcast just literally the other day, and they were about movies. It's really good. I could really recommend it. It's called The Cinephiles, and it was recommended to me by a friend. And there's like a couple of hundred episodes, and they'll just take a movie and talk about it in detail, and it's really interesting. And they were saying, and which I agree, they were saying. The best thing about Jaws, for instance, is the fact that the shark didn't work because it made Spielberg be more creative and inventive with not showing the shark. Yeah. And it's the same with Alien, because no matter how beautifully designed Geiger designed that alien costume, at the end of the day, it was still a very tall man in a monster suit.
Yep.
And they were really aware of that apparently in the movie, and every time Ridley Scott was shooting it, it just looked like a man in a monster suit. Hence that's why you hardly see it, or you see it in fleeting images, or you just see close-ups, and it just leaves stuff more to the imagination. And I've always been a firm believer, and I know this sounds really ironic coming from a guy that's basically come off 16 years of drawing zombies, but I truly believe that the best sort of horror is left to your imagination, because your mind conjures up worse images than you could ever portray in a movie. I mean, my favorite probably sequence in the last, 10 years, easily 10 years of watching any movie, but particularly horror, is, I think I know if you've seen the film, is that sequence in Hereditary.
Yes, of course I have.
Spoiler alert! I won't tell. I won't.
The most disturbing movie in, like, I don't know. 15 years.
I mean, an incredible. That film stuck with me. But that scene where everyone switch off now if they don't want to hear what happens. But where the girl gets her head cut off. A, you don't expect it. B, you don't see it. And C, the best part of that whole scene is the moments after, where he's just sat in the car and you're sort of aware what's happened, but you're not 100% sure. But no one, including that character, does not want to look in the back seat to see what's happened, you know. And I think that was just the perfect sort of way of doing horror like that, you know.
Yeah,
you didn't need to see the head come off. It's so much worse imagining what's happened.
It's a lot more scary, and also at the same time, you know, it's some in a big way. But with Jesus Saith is also a big fan of horror, and we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking it's part of our genetics, if you know what I mean. You know, we survive as a species because of our ability to recognize patterns. You know, so recognize patterns in a good way and in a bad way. In a bad way, you know, you guys get the joke about people seeing Jesus Christ, you know, in a sandwich or whatever what they fear, or other things. But it's also, you know, when you hear rustling on some leaves, and you're like, okay, you know, maybe a tiger, whatever animal is there hiding, is going to kill me, so you run away. So that also makes you, when you're watching horror, since you expect, because of your pattern recognition, it's a lot scarier, because that's the, you know, the primal instinct reacting. But when they give it all down to you, at least in my case, you may be reacting like, ugh, but never scared, because it's already there. It's your mind completing that pattern is what makes it scary, and that's what makes all those, you know, even the Universal monsters, the original ones. I keep reminding people about, you know, Boris Karloff's, you know, the mummy, the original mummy.
Yes,
you don't see anything there.
No.
There's nothing you see. It's all put there in your brain to complete.
Yeah.
And that's
well, it's the same if you're going way back, you know, into the, you know, classics. It's the same with something like Nosferatu, where
exactly
the most scary thing, imagery in Nosferatu is the shadow going up the wall. The simplest of shots in a lot of ways, but I mean, stuff like that is just so much more affecting, like you say, than I've never been a big fan. When I was young, I loved a bit of gore. You know, I'm 53. I was the perfect generation for the video. What we were called in the UK, the video nasties. The sort of when video cassette was first out. You know, the government in our wonderful government, Thatcher's government, had a purge on, you know, sort of horror movies, and you know, at the time, obviously the early to mid 80s, there were all those, you know, Z-list gory movies, you know, things like Cannibal Holocaust and I Spit on Your Grave and all those sort of things, which
Fred, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and all that.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, some deserve to go in the bin, but not banned. You know, some should have been banned just because they were crap movies, not because, you know, of the gore factor. But I lapped all that up when I was 20, whatever, you know, late teens, early 20s, as I was getting them. You know, I loved all. I saw everything, you know, at the time.
But it's
got the, you know, I've not been to see. You know, there will be a lot of horror movies I'll go and see, but there will be a lot of horror movies I won't. I just can't be bothered to see. You know, I never saw. Ironically, I saw the first film. Like, for instance, I never saw another one of those.
Same thing. I was like, I'm done. You know that.
No, I've never seen any of the remakes of Halloween. You know, Friday the 13th, blah blah blah. Any of those. You know,
I watched the last one because Jamie Lee Curtis was back.
Oh, and it was an interesting director as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that was fine, but none of the ones, not the the non-Carpenter ones. I gotta say, I haven't watched them. I didn't care.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I saw one of the other last films I saw before the lockdown was The Invisible Man. I really enjoyed that. I
haven't watched it. Haven't watched it. But people is telling me it's a good one, but it's so many versions, and with all that thing with the dark universe, they wanted to do that crap that badly. I was like, after how bad the Mummy was, and I mean bad, like bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I never saw that. Again, the Mummy was one of those things I just, I am, the older you get, the more, should we say, the less your time is free, obviously. So you got to pick and choose what. And I do read reviews and stuff, and something like The Mummy when that came out, obviously the Tom Cruise one. I read the reviews. I was reluctant to go and see a Tom Cruise horror movie anyway, but after the reviews, I was like, no, I'm not going to waste my time with that one.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If they have done it the way with like the Brendan Fraser ones, the first two, the third is like.
Well, they're kind of good fun, but they're not horror movies, are they?
That's what I want to say. With one, they say let's use the Mummy as an excuse to do an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, exactly.
A family movie. Let's have fun. It has some scenes that are there to like creep you out, whatever. But it's not a horror movie. With this one, it's like it's a Tom Cruise vehicle. But then somebody decided, no, let's make it a horror movie. Like, no, that's not what Tom Cruise does.
No.
So then, of course, Tom Cruise probably fought back and says, that's not what I do.
Yeah.
So then you watch a movie, and I watch it on TV, and you're like, okay, this is not a Tom Cruise movie, and this is not a horror movie. Something in between that doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I'd recommend the Invisible Man's been, no one's saying it's part of the dark universe anyway.
No. After it tanks that badly, I guess that Universal was like, "No, don't never use those words again."
I think there's rumours that Universal are planning on letting Blumhouse do versions of all their classic monsters. That might be interesting.
Who? Sorry?
Blumhouse, the production.
Blumhouse.
People. Yeah. Because. They've done such a good job with The Invisible Man. It's why.
Okay. I'm just worried Blumhouse that they start to do gore movies with all of them, but
Yeah. I mean, the problem is Dracula. They really need to something like Dracula or Frankenstein. It's been so well, especially Dracula. Do we really need another version of Dracula? Frankenstein. Okay, perhaps that could be rebooted because really the last proper version, and I've got a kind of a fondness for it, I've got to admit, was the Kenneth Branagh.
The Kenneth Branagh one, yeah.
Yeah.
There was another one afterwards with, sorry, I forgot the name of the actor, the guy who played Two-Face on Batman on Dark Knight. I Frankenstein or something like that.
Yeah, I almost
really bad.
Yeah, I almost discount that one because it's not really the classic story, is it? It's just him.
Yeah, but that's when they were doing also the other Dracula, Dracula Lives or whatever you would call.
Well, I'm not even including those. They just feel like just using the name to do something.
I always thought that Dracula, the only way you can do a proper Dracula movie now could be to make it from the other side of the equation. I mean, not from Dracula's point of view, but pick one of the characters.
Oh right, yeah.
And do, like Alien. Imagine, maybe that's close to what Alan and Kevin O'Neill did on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. No, it's not, but you know what I mean. We saw that book mostly from Mina Harker's.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, you make it from Mina Harker's perspective, and and the Sigourney Weaver, and you have the alien in the back who's Dracula.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, but just to do the same story again. I mean, Dracula, out of all of them, I think, is the most familiar with everybody. Everybody knows the story beats to Dracula.
Just give me a second.
Okay. I'll just keep filling. I'll just stare blankly at the screen. I've run out of things to say. This is my studio. My toys and books.
Sorry, it's an important package for my wife. I'll be back in one second.
That's all right.
She left. So.
Just check my phone.
Sorry,
It's all right.
I'm sorry, you all. It was an important button for my wife to left. I'm back. So when we're discussing that, with Frankenstein and all the others, let's go back to horror. Why horror for you? What if there's any, or is any other genre in comics that you like more than horror?
Oh, really? Well, you asked why horror. Which is a sort of shall we say? Basically, you're asking why The Walking Dead.
No. I'm asking. No, I'm asking. We'll get there. We'll get there another time. I was asking in.
I was not. No, honestly, horror is it just happens. It's something I've fallen into. It's not. I would be equally as interested in doing, science fiction, drama, whatever it may be. It's just been utterly coincidental. The funny thing is, from my style, because I use a lot of black.
Mm-hmm.
I always have done, and I think a lot of people perceive that as being me interested in sort of, shall we say, the darker parts of humanity or whatever. And you see, I see my use of black as and I think you could probably ask any artist that does use a lot of black why they use a lot of black, and the majority of us would probably say we love it because of its shall we say, design elements.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I love that sort of stark, sort of solid, dead space, negative space, whatever you want to call it. Look that using a lot of black and coincidentally a lot of white can give you. So
is it also because you think for black and white? I mean, you started working and you thought for publication in black and white, or it doesn't affect that at all?
Well, I mean, ironically, I've done more work that's been published in black and white than probably most comic book artists. So I haven't had the whether it's luxury or not luxury to think in color and therefore not have to use as much black. So I'm always aware that what I'm drawing will be seen as the finished thing, and because of that, I'm used to drawing, finishing off whatever page I'm doing. If I'm not coloring it, finishing off to a level where I think I'm happy with it. So I'm not seeing it as, I'm not giving it to a colorist and saying, right, you take it to the next level, please. You fill in the stuff that I haven't done. So I could be perceived. I don't really know. I don't really talk. I don't really actually talk to enough colorists to see what they prefer. But I could be one of literally two polar opposites. I could be the colorist's best thing ever, or I could be a colorist's worst nightmare. Because when you use a lot of black and things like that, it can't be overcolored. If I'm showing where my light source is coming from, because I use a lot of black, so I'm always using shading on faces and bodies and all that sort of stuff. A colorist doesn't have to do it. So, is that a good thing for colorists, or would a colorist prefer to do their own thing and do more fancy stuff to show with their, light sources and all that sort of stuff? So I don't know. I don't know what they prefer. I assume I'm a quicker job for a colorist because they don't have to do stuff like that. Yeah, the worst kind of coloring job is where the colorist decides to put their own, sort of light source, which might not.
Yes.
Light source, so they're conflicting. But I think actually in my career, in the last 30 years, I think the thing out of all the different disciplines in comic books, I think coloring is the thing where it's come on leaps and bounds.
Absolutely.
When I first started, colorists were almost technicians. It was almost people who could handle a computer more than had a skill in colouring. Now, it's a proper art form, and it's a
Let's not remember the 90s and the
well, exactly.
he can do Photoshop. That's the job.
Yeah, well, exactly. Oh, yeah. You've got a technical skill. You've got a computer. Brilliant. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we've come a long way from that, which is great. There's some brilliant colorists out there, and a lot of people that can make an average comic book artist look brilliant just because of the coloring job. I mean, I've found myself picking up books nowadays. Not that often, but a couple of times I've picked up books because of the colouring as opposed to the artwork, because the colouring, the whoever's done the colouring has done it in a really interesting, unique way, or something that's got me really excited. So, yeah.
There's some, of course, I always have believed, of course, you probably will disagree with me, that artists like you or Eduardo Rizzo or others who use, a lot of black and white, as you said, on pages, are better if they get, flat coloring, instead of volumetric. And every time I see that one of you again getting volumetric coloring with effects and all that, I am like, no. He just told you with the art, this is what the art needs, and you're going the opposite way. It cannot work.
No, I think the two best colouring jobs, that stick in my mind in the past anyway, are Dave Stewart doing Mike Mignola.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten the name who did all the Eduardo's, all his 100 Bullets stuff.
I think it was Julia Brusco.
Right, but whoever, I mean, that was a great job.
I remember she started the book, but I don't remember seeing it.
But no, I mean, it's interesting to see Eduardo colouring himself on Moonshine, because I'm a big Rizzo fan. And he's colouring pretty much like whoever coloured him on 100 Bullets and everything, that sort of, whether that's how he always wanted to colour, or I've never talked to him about it, or whether it was, whether he that's how he's always wanted to colour, or whether he's seen how other people have coloured his work and he's just adopted that style. But it's interesting to see what he does on his own work is incredibly similar to how other colorists have coloured him in the past. But I mean, like say Dave Stewart, he had such a fine handling of Mike's work, for instance. Just the less is more approach, which I've always been a big fan of, is so evident in something like that. He knows exactly what works with. Well, I mean, the thing that I'm really lacking in my own colour work is I've never learned colour theory or anything like that. So I do tend to flail around a lot, testing out colours, seeing if they work together. The rare times I get to colour, which is pretty much the only time I tend to colour stuff, is if I'm doing a variant cover or something like that. And a lot of my stuff just tends to be, sort of happy accidents. Well, that works together. Brilliant. That's fine. Keep it like that, And I'm jealous of people that can, that have a more technical grounding and just can go to that sort of, I don't know what's the best way to describe it, sort of state straight away. Whereas it would have probably taken me, a lot longer to get to that stage. But that's how I've always been when I, used to paint stuff, because I did it so irregularly. It would be like constantly learning how to paint again each time, because I did it so little. It's the same with colouring on, the Cintiq or Photoshop or whatever. Is I do it so rarely. It's like I never get a chance to establish a language with it, as opposed to doing my black and white stuff, because I'm doing that every day. So you get a language established. You find all your shortcuts. You know exactly what to do in black and white, whereas color, I'm sort of a bit more, I don't know, you know, it is that sort of staring at a blank page almost, whereas I never had that problem with black and white.
And do you have the urge to, you know, keep testing yourself with the coloring, or you're like, you know what?
Well, I like a challenge, so I'm always up for coloring my stuff. I mean, I literally just did last week. I did a variant cover for Undiscovered Country, and yeah, I love doing that sort of stuff. You know, I'm always up for doing that kind of stuff. You know, but it probably takes me twice as long to do a cover. Ironically, being known as one of the fastest artists in the business, you know, it's sometimes I can be painfully slow as well. But that's when I'm hitting those points which I'm just not sure of, and I find with doing stuff like that, there's a lot of staring at the screen and actually not doing stuff, just staring at it, going, "Is this working? I don't know," and sort of tentatively. I think I'm still, because even though I've been working digitally on and off for about the last 5 or 6 years, I still think the working, you know, like on a drawing board for me is still my kind of natural state. So I've still got that mindset of not being as daring as I can be, because all I have to do is undo it. If it doesn't work, just delete. Just undo or delete that layer or whatever. If you want to experiment, just do another layer, see how it works. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, delete it. I'm still kind of weirdly hesitant on all that stuff, because I've almost physically think it's like working with real paint. If I put it on, if it doesn't work, I've ruined it, you know. So there's that hesitancy with everything. It is a weird process. So I can still take, you know, when I was doing The Walking Dead, you know, just when I got on a roll with it, you know, I was literally doing a page every, you know, when I was inking myself, especially, I was probably doing a page every 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, you know, which is a hell of a turnaround. Yeah, just getting the stuff, and it wasn't like I was, treating it like, frivolously. That was just my speed. I had my language. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Boom, 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 boom. We're off. You know, it can take me 2 or 3 days to do a variant cover, and most of it is literally just staring at the screen going, is that right? You know, trying to get the design right.
No, really. 2-3 days is the time that people usually takes to do a cover. So you are not slow.
To me, it's slow.
No, for you, I know. But in terms of standard speed, 2-3 days is what another professional artist takes to do a cover. Yeah. So you're fine. Don't worry, you're fine.
Okay.
But in terms of that, I'm going to send you a copy of Mark Chiarello's book.
Who? Sorry,
Mark Chiarello.
Oh, okay, right. What his what? Like a. Oh, the thing he did.
Guys, I was making a joke. Chiarello did how is it called? Coloring the DC Comics way, or something like that.
Oh no, I remember the book. Yeah.
All joking aside,
then I'll finally learn.
all joking aside, okay, not horror. You said you fell into it, but it is, you know, for example, the other day with Garth was like, as I expected, war comics.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't grow up in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. We didn't have good distribution for superhero comics, so other people fell in love with them, and he was putting, you know, like Alan Moore or other guys fell in love growing up because they could get them, but I couldn't. Yeah. But the only thing I could get, and I don't remember the name of what he said, was like a small booklets that had
compact. Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember those as well.
And that you grew up with that too, or
no?
Not your thing. As I was saying, if not horror,
yeah.
Is there any gender that you grew up with that you say, this is something that it has stayed with me until now as a reader.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was aware of them. I mean, they were in the our shops, newsagents, supermarkets, whatever. Back in the when I was a kid, back in the 70s, going into the 80s. No, I was lucky because my dad, when I was about 6, brought me The Mighty World of Marvel #1, which was the British reprint of obviously the Marvel comics, and it was an anthology because I'm sure all the British creators you've talked to, like Garth and everything. What worked is it's weird. What worked over here, tended not to work in America. We British comics were all anthologies. Never more than a couple of pages, and then another story, etc., etc. That was what sold generally. Whereas obviously Americans were monthly books, one single story, etc., etc. So that initial issue, they'd got Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and the Hulk, and they were all divided. Yeah, they all shared a third of the comic each, which worked kind of well because it was a weekly, so they were running a monthly story of each character.
Yeah.
They were splitting up enough that they could do it for a month for those 4 weeks. So that was my first proper introduction to comics. I never grew up with the sort of the classic British humour comics like the Dandy Beano and things like that. That's what I gravitated to straight away as a kid. I was always, just your basic nerd geek. I was into science fiction when I was young. I wasn't sporty. I was always into art, obviously, but that was my kind of thing. And so that's what I grew up on, and I also grew up on Asterix as well, which still, again, my dad used to go to this petrol station, fill up his car, and they were running a promotion. It was about the same time, my age, I was about 6 or whatever, and the promotion was if you filled up your car enough times, you got an Asterix book. It was a special, whatever the petrol company it was at the time, it was a special edition, but still formatted like your traditional, bande dessinée book, still large format. They hadn't changed the format. It was just, I think the cover dress was slightly different, and that was it. I think it had the logo of the petrol station or company on it somewhere. So on one hand, I was brought up on, obviously not realizing it at the time, but I was brought up on French comic books. On the other hand, I was brought up on American superhero stuff. And I actually read the Marvel UK stuff right up till I was quite old. I didn't really discover, I was aware that they were the monthlies. I mean, from a young age, but you just couldn't get them. Not where I live, or I still live here in Shrewsbury in Shropshire. You just couldn't. There wasn't a comic shop here, especially when we got into the 80s. And it was only, funny enough, it was only a guy I met at school in the last few years of being at school who told me that he said, you do realise you can mail order, the American versions. And I remember going, can you? Oh. And
boom.
And that was it. I discovered then, actually, there was a comic shop probably, I think the nearest one at the time was about 40 miles away in a place called Stoke-on-Trent. Stoke-on-Trent. I'm almost talking about, this is another slightly bigger town than Shrewsbury, and place called Fantasy World. And immediately saw an advert. As soon as I saw an advert for it, I started mail ordering stuff, and I'd sort of, after I learnt to drive and things like that, I'd drive down there periodically, once every 3 or 4 months, and go on a bit of a shopping spree on top of the mail order stuff. And that was it. And coincidentally, the guy who told me about that at school was a guy, his name was Steve Holland. And he went on to open up a shop in Nottingham called Page 45, which is one of the most influential comic book shops in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny story is, when I heard of Page 45, when I was a professional and everything, and I was working, I heard it was run by a guy called Steve Holland, and I remember thinking, oh, how ironic, because there was a guy I used to know at school called Steve Holland, and Nottingham's about an hour and a half drive from where I am, almost nearly 2 hours, so it's a fair old distance. So I didn't, I just thought Steve Holland is not a particularly unique name. So I thought, oh, it's funny, there's two people who are into comics called Steve Holland. Ha 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 ha. And it was only until about 4 or 5 years ago at the Lakes International Comic Art Festival that he came up to me and went, we used to go to school together. I was like, of course it's the same Steve Holland. So, So Steve was very instrumental, funny enough, in my comic.
He never reached out to you?
Sorry, did he?
I mean, since you've been a professional artist and he has the store, he never reached out to you?
It was quite funny that he never did. No, it took literally both of us being at the same festival for him to literally to come up to me, because it was so long ago I couldn't really remember what he even looked like. So when I'd actually seen him before, when I went and thought, I don't know, it could be the same Steve Holland. If you told me that was the same Steve Holland, I'd believe you. If someone said, no way, that's not the same Steve Holland, I'd equally believe you, because I just really could very vaguely remember what he looked like, Plus the fact he shaved his hair as well. And of course he had a big I remember him having dark hair and glasses when he was at school. Still had the glasses, but he certainly shaved his hair. And as soon as you radically change your hair, I think that's when you stop recognizing people.
And why? Of course, I guess, as with most artists, you started drawing since you were a kid and never stopped. But why comics? Why did you decide to comics and not illustration or animation or anything else?
Well, it was my dad buying me that Mighty Wood of Marvel. I mean, I was definitely doodling beforehand, and I was definitely drawing beforehand. It's something you'd have to ask my mum now, but what I drew before comics, she probably won't remember either, but it was definitely that moment when my dad brought it. But I do remember that moment. It's that impactful on my life when he came into our sitting room and he had something behind his back. And it's weird that I remember this. So it must have been a big moment. I do very, very vaguely remember before that moment that there was some British humour anthologies called Wham and Pow and Smash and things like that, which were more your classic humour comics, but right in the middle was a centred spread. And I think it might not have been full colour, it might have just been 4-colour. I'm not 100% sure, but they were running Marvel comics just in the centre, so it's only 2 pages worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I do vaguely remember that, and I remember being a lot more drawn to that than I was the more humorous stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was as soon as my dad brought me those comics, and like I say, being a combination of probably even at that young age, sort of veering towards your more fantasy, science fiction sort of stuff anyway, that it just seemed that perfect combination. I was drawing, and then all of a sudden I started drawing, not necessarily comics, but I drew narratively, shall we say, as opposed to just single images. I do remember it was a long time before I actually panelled stuff out and did it as proper panels, but I'd always draw narratively. So I'd always draw, like I'd fill a page with just random drawings, but it would have a story to it. No one would know they had a story apart from me. It almost looked like some sort of weird Jackson Pollock-esque, mess on on the page. Thankfully, my dad, he ran a couple of small businesses, and one of them was a newsagent. So, of course, I was kept in a ready supply of free paper and free biros and things like that I could just doodle away. And, I think if you talk to anybody of my age, we didn't have, and it sounds really obvious, but we didn't have computer games, the internet, etc., etc. So, and I wasn't an outdoorsy type kid. I can't stand football, for instance, and I wasn't athletic. I didn't go out. I wasn't an outside kid. I'm woefully uncoordinated as well on top of it. So there's no, any ball games right out of the park because I just couldn't do them. So, drawing was my thing. So I'd spend every waking time of my free time drawing. Simple as, so still do.
Yeah, and when you're drawing, it's always fascinating to me to talk about process because it changes even slightly between each and every one of you.
Oh yeah.
So with, for example, and I always put the sample of, Olivier Coipel because his answer was probably the most fascinating until now. He tells me that, when he does layouts, he needs absolute silence. But then when he goes to the most, because he needs to, design, put everything together, make it fit into place, etc. But then he goes to inks. When he goes to inks, or even when he colors a cover, which is the only things he colors, he needs noise, he needs sounds. In inks he can be with a podcast, etc. When he layouts, not even a single word because it distracts you, etc. But then he goes with, okay, I need, for this scene, it's an epic scene, so I need Lord of the Rings or Last of the Mohicans, something that emotionally puts me into it. But if it's down in an intimate scene, emotional, he goes to romantic classic French, classic music.
Right.
So that put his mind into that emotion.
Sure.
Like his brain rewires. It's like this enhances my art on that scene because I know then that my brain is wired in that direction. How is it for you?
Well, that's really interesting. I would agree definitely on needing silence. Well, not necessarily silence, but I need to concentrate when I'm penciling. Because I ink myself, my penciling is not proper finished penciling. It's I suppose it's layouts, and then I go straight in with the inks. And again, with digital stuff, my pencils are even more rough because I instantly know I can draw even more in ink because I can undo it straight away. It's almost like more detailed.
So you're totally digital now. You don't even do a.
No. It varies between projects.
Okay.
I just think what's best for the project.
Absolutely.
But I always have something on. But I would prefer, if I'm penciling, I prefer something like the radio, which you don't have to listen to. I do find, that if I want to listen to something, I don't want to listen to it while I'm penciling because I will concentrate and I'll miss what I'm listening to, and then I'll just have to play it again or whatever. So because when you're laying out stuff, you're always referring to the script and reading stuff, and then, like you say, working it out in your head. But when it comes to the inking and the coloring, it's just a lot more freeing and a lot more free flowing, and you can, that's when funny enough, in the last few years, I've got more into listening to podcasts as opposed to music. I always used to say I'd listen to music, which I still do, but I've discovered the wonderful world of podcasting, which is, a bit lethal because there's so much of it, and it's almost like editing down what you really enjoy,
Yes.
I can, but when I'm inking, I can literally listen to a podcast and absorb it, which is, perfect. But that's my favorite process as well, is the inking. The penciling is the hard work, and it's almost like the meat and potatoes of it. It's the grind. Even though you're kind of working out and doing more thinking, I also liken it to when I was at art college. Obviously, there was no comic course, so I didn't do comics. I actually ended up doing film and video, and my preferred process of when I was making films or whatever was the editing. I didn't like the location shooting, the actual getting the footage. That was the hard work. That was the grind. Even though it was arguably the most important thing, I just didn't enjoy it. As soon as I could sit in front of the editing suite and put it together, that was my favorite bit. And I do liken, layout, penciling, whatever, and inking to the same process. For me, the penciling is that kind of grind, just working it all out, and it's a bit. I just want to get through it. I really want to get to the inking, and the inking for me is when I get really creative. But again, funnily enough, I can listen to music and things like that, and I can concentrate on other things whilst inking. So yeah, that's always my preferred choice.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I always ask the same to artists, which is, when you're with the grind of the daily work, the layouts, pencils, things, blah blah blah, is there a part where you just start with it, you are so happy with it every day, or not every day, but that you just cannot stop thinking, this is why I do comics, this is why I love it. So in your case, it's obviously the inks, as you just said.
Yeah.
And I just remember my brother, he was in film school, one of them, and he could have been a director, and he wants, but he's a movie editor. Right. And once I asked him why, if it was because there was more chances for work, etc., and he was like, no, I just like to put all the pieces together, because until it gets to me, believe it or not, the movie doesn't exist.
No,
people think this is on shooting or a script. No, it doesn't exist until it gets to me. Yeah. And I like it so much. It was the science of making it all work that I have never equated it with things. But in a way, as you just said, the inks complete the project.
Yeah. That is the final. In terms of basic comics, that's the final bit. Coloring and lettering and everything is obviously essential, but it's the inking is that time where you see it. Just you get a sense of what it is. Before, it's like you say, it's this just thing just floating in the air, isn't it? But that is the time it all comes together. But yeah, that is definitely my favorite process. If you had to choose, well, you see, the funny thing is, if I had to choose, I'd say I'd be an inker. But there again, I wouldn't want to be. Oh, I hated that. I almost said just an inker, which is very disingenuous against inkers. But I'm a British comic book artist. We've been brought up to do everything.
Yeah, same here in Spain, absolutely.
Yeah. That's. I think that's the difference between us and the Americans, for sure. Their tradition is to be either a penciler or an inker, whereas our tradition, right from the beginning, was always it's just one artist. We do it all.
Yeah.
Whether it's because the workload generally wasn't as much, because, like I said, because of the anthology approach to comics, you might only have to do 2 or 3 pages a week, whereas obviously with US comics, the workload is arguably more intense. So that is why there's always pencilers and inkers. But whatever the reason, that's you got that. When I was getting in the industry, there weren't many British artists that were just pencilers or just inkers. Most of us did it all.
That's also true. If you think about the original ones, including Dave Gibbons, and all the others, they were inking themselves. There was no and it's funny because the first Spaniards, who also worked for the British market, for agencies and all that, they all worked they all link themselves,
Yeah.
and Maroto working for Warren and all the others, Fernando Fernandez, they all link themselves.
Right.
But then you had the first generation like Carlos Pacheco and the others who started working for Marvel or DC. They didn't link themselves. But then the second generation of the Spanish ones, they all do it. They all do it pencils and inks.
Right.
And we've always insisted on this is how we work. We don't work with inkers. The Spanish artists are teach, pencil, ink, lettering, everything,
Right.
from the get-go. So, I think it's permeated so much in the American industry that now even the new American artists are starting to be also pencilers and inkers, maybe because of the digital stuff. But it's more and more become part of the industry to accept, guys, people doesn't do pencils or inks, they do both.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's definitely a bigger leaning towards everyone doing something else, and like you say, it's probably arguably more to do with the fact of there's because of digital comics, there's more scope for being a complete artist, for want of a better word. The only downside to that is, it's always a big bugbear with me with the US industry, especially, is the fact that everyone sort of does the fully finished artwork, but then you never get a book where an artist is on it for longer than 4 issues, 6 issues max.
Yeah,
because it's obviously, if you're doing it all the disciplines, you just can't do a monthly book, and it's a constant source of frustration for me. When I pick up a book and you enjoy the art, and and the artist is off after 4 to 6 issues, and it's replaced by generally someone inferior, and it's not really surprising that therefore the writer nowadays gets the big
credit,
accolades for comics, because it's not very often you associate comic books with a singular vision of an artist, whereas most comic books do have a singular vision of a writer. You don't get a load of writers working on whether it's Batman or a creator-owned thing. It's generally one writer for at least a good chunk of time, and you don't get that with the art, and it's really annoying. So you could argue that is the reason, again, going back to what I was saying before, why there was pencilers and inkers for especially the American industry, which is a big turnover. And I think it's been proven time and time again, the comics that don't come out regularly are the comics that tend to fail. Unless they're really, really big, hard hitters, you're not going to have a successful comic if you're coming out, well, unless you announce it, and say we're taking a hiatus or whatever, so the artist has to catch up, blah, 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 blah. If things just vanish off the shelves for a couple of months and then just sort of sneak back on again with somebody else, it's people have lost interest.
It's part of the problem with sometimes you hope that they learn by seeing success. And I mean, I was looking at I have here an Ultimate space by Brian Hitch, and when I was with Millar a couple of weeks ago, he literally told me the story. We were late. We were really late, and there was a chance, to have a feeling artist, blah blah blah. But Joe said, Quesada said, no, this is your vision. It has to be you. If we have to delay the book, we'll delay it. And then it's sold like hotcakes. Anyway, it's sold even more.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, you don't remember, but Watchmen issue 12 was really late.
Oh right, really? Okay.
Can you imagine that DC had decided, you know what, somebody else is going to do it? Not Dave Gibbons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you think, okay, you saw that if you wait, people is going to buy it anyway. And they're going to get the full story. And then even if you say, I'm going to lose money because I don't have 2 issues in the can for 2 months, guys, you've been selling Ultimate trade paperbacks, hardcovers, Watchmen, whatever, for ages. You make the money back in like this. So I am always thinking, why don't you learn from that? Or even do what they did in Hush with Jim Lee. Work in advance, work in advance, work in advance. And when it's ready, you put it out. And you have other teams with Batman for a year while Jim and Jeff do their stuff.
Well, it's not that hard. Well, it depends, doesn't it? I mean, if you've got someone like Jim Lee on the title, like you said, it makes sense to do it in advance, so it all comes out at once. But you know the book is probably going to sell a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's slightly different if you're working with somebody that's not so well known, and you kind of think, "Oh, are we going to do this in advance, or is this going to be a massive waste of money?" You know, so I you know, not to call controversy, but I do think there's a single level of there seems to be more unprofessionalism in the industry in the last 20 years than were when I were a lad. You know, that everyone was, you know, everyone met deadlines, and you know, it's a simple thing. If you know your own speed, if you can't do it, either tell the publisher so they can implement whatever things are necessary, or don't accept ongoing series, just accept mini-series with enough room to maneuver. I know, obviously, there can be other factors. There can be family tragedies. There can be, loads, but that's obviously a rare thing. Generally speaking, most artists, and we're talking mainly artists in this sort of level, you know, if they can't do the work, they've got to be honest with themselves and not commit to stuff that they sort of vaguely hope they might be able to do, but they've never done it in the past. So why on earth are they going to suddenly, you know, come out of the traps to be able to do it this time? It's just living in cloud cuckoo land. And
that's also why, you know, when people ask me why is there so many foreign artists in American comics in the last 15, 20 years, I always answer the same. First, because they're really good. Second, because they do their fucking deadlines.
Yeah, they're professional. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but do you mean the Americans don't do the deadlines? Ask your editor. Don't ask me.
Yeah. Well,
you know, but we do the deadlines. We get the deadlines. We make it on time. And if we say, I need 6 weeks for that book because the artist is really slow, we say in advance, he needs 6 weeks. Don't give him an assignment that requires 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So we're really clear. They always know what to expect. That makes them respect you. That makes them give you the work because they know you're going to do it in the time you promised to do it.
Yeah. It just beggars belief that people, you know, don't commit. And I just think it's, well, yeah, it is. It's taking the piss. A lot of artists, you know, it's especially, especially some people who profess a love. You probably know who I'm talking. I'm not going to mention their names, but you probably, by what I'm going to describe, you probably know what. Yeah, people that profess to love comic books and then leave the industry and don't draw comics anymore. And you just think, what are you doing with your life? You know, it's like, I think you could almost say nearly 100% of people who work in this industry do it because they love what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you don't love what you do, why the hell are you in this industry? You know? And there are certain artists out there that and the other thing I don't really understand actually is artists that just do conventions now and don't do comic books.
Yes.
I'd love to talk to somebody and say some of those and just say, why have you made this decision? I'm just intrigued because
I can tell you only one example of one of those, and I won't mention names, at least not live, but when we're off, I will say who.
Okay.
Who literally told me, and he explained me well because I asked him, why you're in a lot of conventions, doing commissions, blah, blah, blah. You are not doing any comics book right now, right? And he said, no, except for maybe one cover here and there, I'm not doing comics. And I was like, why? Honestly, because I make a lot more money.
I was going to say that's probably the factor, especially if they're quite slow.
But he was honest. Most of them, they're not.
Right.
They give you the, you know, all around it, whatever SKUs, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, bullshit. But in this case, he was completely like, look, I wasn't making enough money because of my speed, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
or the assignments, I am making a lot more money with the conventions. If this dries out in a couple of years or 3, maybe I'll have to rethink it. But right now, it's just survival. I make more money doing conventions.
Oh no, I'm sure that's pretty much the reason why these people do that sort of thing. There cannot be another reason. You know, they can't be doing it for some artistic reason, because it is the most. Well, the problem I have with, because I don't do commissions, mainly because I might change my tune if suddenly I found myself in financial hardship. But well, actually, just one other thing. I've put I don't know if you saw it. I did a sketch of Michonne.
Yes. Saw it on your page. The eBay one, yeah.
The sketch, and I've put it on eBay to go to this charity, the Black Curriculum in the UK. So anyone that's interested, I think the bidding's going to finish tonight. But yeah, it was a drawing that took me less than an hour to do, the Michonne. Last time I looked, it was up to £450, and that was 24 hours ago. So we all know with eBay, it's only pretty much the last 12 hours that kind of matter. You know, it was already up to that, and I was thinking, Jesus Christ, 450 quid for an hour's work. That ain't bad, is it? So I can totally understand why certain artists can probably charge thousands for their work.
Yes.
And they might spend a couple of days on it, which is a brilliant way of earning money, isn't it? And if you're doing that fairly consistently, you're making a fuck of a good living, aren't you? So I can totally understand the financial needs for stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we all got into it to draw comics.
No, absolutely.
And like I say, my problem with commissions, and it's only a personal thing, is when you're drawing a comic, it will sell, I don't know, it can sell anything between a couple of thousand to, shall we say,
whatever, 150.
Whatever, 100,000. Yeah, Walking Dead, 100,000, whatever. And that's just your initial sales. That's not trades. That's not, foreign rights. I think that somebody banded around the figure. I don't know how many millions of copies we've sold of The Walking Dead collectively worldwide. But you get that, but you get that audience figure, and a part of you goes, "Ooh, that's a lot of people." But it doesn't affect the way I draw, because my reasoning is, you can't please all the people all the time.
Yeah.
So there's no point in trying to draw to appeal to everybody, because they've all got different opinions.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, you just draw to satisfy yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, with any creative process, that's the best way to approach it, to satisfy yourself. And hopefully you will bring some other people on the journey with you, because if you're satisfying yourself, that's your best work. If you try and preempt an audience, that's when you're going to do your worst work, and it's been proven, whether it's in movies, music, comics, whatever, not to do that. When you're doing a commission, you've got to please that one person.
Yes.
And for me, the pressure to please that one person is worse than drawing for 100,000 people. And I just feel less creative doing that. And that's the reason I don't do commissions. It's plus the fact that probably everyone would ask me for a zombie or a Rick or a Michonne, and I've drawn them enough.
Yeah. But also
but that aside, it's just I'm just not interested in that aspect of it. And I come from a nicely comfortable, privileged position of being able to say I don't want to do that, which is. I'm very lucky to say that. I totally appreciate that. And I totally appreciate, like say, that artist's honest answer about, well, I make more money doing this. And at the end of the day, if you've got a wife and kids or whatever it is to support, I'm a big believer in what we do as an art form. It's a very unique art form in the way that it's called the comic book industry. So there has to be that level of, I suppose, craft with it as well.
Absolutely. No, that's what the other part I was going to get to. First, just remember that Capullo does the same thing. Capullo doesn't do commissions. Capullo just does a print, each con that is different for every con. Like limited, like 50, whatever. He brings it to the con, and gives it away. But that's it. He's never do commissions. Same reason. I do comics. He always says, I do comics. I don't do commissions. But the other thing I was going to say is what you're talking about, the language, the craft. The other day with Adam, with Hughes, we get, philosophizing, if that's even a word, about how learning to read comics teaches you to question life in a different way. And let me explain that. Reading between the lines is not that easy.
No.
But if you learn to read comics, you have to learn to read what happens between the panels to complete things. It's always about completing. And Alan gave me an example of a person who couldn't do it, literally couldn't do it. Even if you put in front of her, I think it was a family member, grandma or something, she couldn't complete it. And that brought me to think, okay, but if you learn to complete the information, then in life, when you read, you don't read literally anyway. Yeah. At least for me and the people and the kids I know that have started reading comics, they are all kids that know how to read between the lines, how to question things, how to see that not everything is literal. And the other way around, if they don't read comics and they don't think about what's between the information you have to complete, that moment when you see Clark Kent doing this, but the next moment he's already flying. You have completed all the process.
Yeah, because if you've read, if it's described in a novel, you will get the whole through line of from doing that to flying. Whereas, in a comic, wish I'd have thought about this when I was comics laureate. That would have been really good, a really good thing to have added. But that's quite interesting. I mean, it is. Reading comics is a lot more complex than people give it credit for. Obviously, like you say, it's something you do have to learn. It's not something you can just pick up and go, oh, this is easy. It's not like learning. Once you've learned to read, you can read any novel, but it's not the same, like you say, with comic books. That there is a process. Actually, it's quite interesting, sort of slightly off tack. I've just done, it was a thing for charity, a COVID-19 related charity, excuse me, called, and it was working with, it's written by people of my age or adults or whatever, but we worked, the process was we worked with a lot of young adult people to get this story, and it's called Devoc 91, which is only COVID-19 backwards, but we're doing it as it's not my decision, but we're doing it on Webtoons. Now, being a traditional comic book person, my first question is, what's Webtoons? So they showed me Webtoons, and what I didn't realize was it's something you pretty much read on your phone.
Yes.
So it's obviously scrolling up every image. So you're reading a comic vertically.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting for starters. But it got me thinking as to what makes a comic book, and I was thinking, in the end, I was thinking Webtoons is not a comic.
No.
It's narrative storytelling, but it's not a comic. And I suddenly realized, what advantage does comics have over, whether it's a novel, whatever other ways of reading, is the process. You can see what makes a comic is you can see the page as a whole and get a sense of the story straight away without any reading. You see it as a whole, the whole page, the design and everything, and instantly you've got a rough idea of what's going on. Whereas Webtoons, doing this action of scrolling up, I don't know what it is. It's a new way of reading, but it's not comics, ironically. And, even though everything is done, the majority of the stuff that I was looking at seemed to be manga anyway. So, I mean, it's perfectly legit as a comic book. It's. But it also made me think, oof, this is when I suddenly feel old, because this is perhaps the next stage, the next stage. People are going to absorb this material, not as because we've all the big argument, especially we've suddenly gone really off piste here with what I'm saying.
No. I was going to complete, but go please.
The whole big argument of digital comics anyway is does it work, reading it on an iPad or whatever on
it doesn't.
TV? And it certainly doesn't work on a phone, because the imagery is too small. And then that's when you have to start taking a page apart and making it work like Webtoons. But if you're actually designing it for Webtoons, brilliant, but so I had to think when we've done it like comic pages, but I had to think about making all my images or the central bit of the images fit that format. I mean, I was doing widescreen panels or whatever. We're only doing pages where it was no more than 4 panels a page. Yeah, because obviously the formatting and everything, and also. It was the first time I've drawn stuff really fast for a long time, funny enough, post Walking Dead, because, I could see all the other Webtoon stuff, and it was really, it wasn't detailed. It was kind of soap opera-ness, just talking heads. So I was aware of that and things, But, I was aware of putting all my characters fairly central in, even if I'm doing a widescreen panel, so they can, condense it to that format, etc., etc. So we have taken a few steps towards traditionalism by doing it as comic pages, because we will print it, and if you print a Webtoons, if it's formatted for the phones, it'll look crap as a comic. Yeah. So you've got to take that into consideration. But it was a really interesting process, and it sort of made me see. It sort of opened my eyes to because sometimes. People will ask me what makes a comic unique over, a book.
I will give you my answer when you finish.
Right. And sometimes I'll stumble over my answers because sometimes, I won't say I don't know, but I haven't got one of these great, scales falling from your eyes moments where I kind of realize what made comics different and why I like them, etc., etc. But I suddenly realized that is it. That is one thing that makes comics, and apart from everything else I can think of, unique, is the fact you can see it all at once. And and why that's a magical thing, as opposed to, scrolling up random images on your phone.
The two things I was going to say. First, the problem with digital comics is that they keep trying to do comics the same way for a digital machine. No, stop. Even Scott McCloud in one of his books, said, if you do it for digital, you cannot do it the same way. And we're talking about the guy who made the theory of understanding comics, blah blah blah. And he was like, you cannot do it. You just can't. So the problem is you get on Comixology, you have to, it's so small, pop to make it pop the panel to make it bigger, so it's just not a comic anymore because that. I was even talking to somebody the other day about, okay, you get a double spread and you get it on an iPad, even if it's the 12.9 inch, the iPad Pro big one. Sorry, you can't, because you see it in vertical, so you don't see the big screen, but you don't see the whole double spread, or you turn it horizontal and then you are like this size. Exactly. So it's impossible. And I was like, why don't they think time-wise? Like timing it. You tell the artist that this is going to be digital, that you're going to read it, this way. But it's going to move bit by bit.
Yeah.
Your eye is going to move. So time it. So when you see it, not an animation, but when you see it, it's a process of time. So you can see the whole thing. So they keep telling me digital comics don't, sales are in a plateau for years. And I keep answering back, that's normal because you're giving them what they see on a paper comic. Why would they buy it digitally for the same price if you give them the same thing? If you want to do it digital, you got to do it exactly as you just said. You got to break it. You got to think, this is the language, this is the format. Call it a webcomic so people know it's not a comic book. It's a different thing. It's a comic in essence, but it's a different media. So you got to really watch it in a different way. And the other part is what I was going to say, that what makes comics different for me is that that's the only thing in the universe that defies relativity.
Oh.
And let me
explain.
And you're gonna flip when I tell you what. This is the first time in my life where I explain it this way, because I just popped in my head. With any other thing, like time moves 1 second, instead never stop. With comics, this is the only way you can manipulate time.
Yes. Well, that does go back to what I was saying about
exactly. That's why it popped into my head, because of what we just said. Time is only in an art form, any art form, or in life, for me at least, the only way a creator can control time in any way he wants. He can take you for 22 pages on the same moment, and keep you there. Or like Alan and Dave did in Watchmen. You can go to chapter 5 and find that something that happened in the back with Laurie in a paneling is happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And you are like, oh wait, I'm watching issue 5, but what happened there? This is exactly at the same time. So they manipulated the timing for 5 issues. So that you can do 22 pages where different times of the day or different days or different whatever. You can the only media, the only art where you can manipulate time that way and take the reader exactly what you want. That's comics.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. No, I've never thought of it that way. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm trying to think of an argument to counter it, just out of interest, but I can't. So, so yes. But yeah, it's all interesting arguments. I mean, when I was, when I was comics laureate for those 2 years, that was it. That was almost kind of my raison d'etre for existing, and as in any other. When Dave was, comics laureate, when Hannah Berry, who's the next comics laureate, we've all got the same sort of thing we have to sort of prove to everybody, is the fact that we almost have to go out there and prove that comics are worth existing, and arguing for them in terms of being a different medium, and that's what they are. They are a medium. They're not a genre. They're a medium. And actually, what, again, to slightly go off piece, but Hannah, the latest comics laureate, came up with a really good, simple idea of getting people more used to comic books, and that was basically, if you go into a bookstore, comic books are in the comic book section, which is very much ghettoizing comic books, isn't it? But so you've got your romance comics next door to your fantasy, your horror, your whatever. It's because basically that bookshop is saying it's a genre, it's not a medium. She was just saying, why can't we just put comic books, if it's a horror comic book, put it in the horror section. If it's a romance book, put it in the fiction section or whatever. So they're all spread out. So people just go, looks interesting, pull it out. And they'll probably go, oh, it's a comic. But they'll carry on because that shop's put it in the adult section, shall we say, the grown-up section. Suddenly you're not ghettoizing them anymore. You're just saying, anyone can read this. This is just fine. You're not with that bunch of slightly, 40-something-year-olds who haven't washed for a few days, sort of surrounding the comic book section, and sorry, I'm not insulting comic fans because that is the general public's perception.
But I actually don't agree.
Yeah,
I don't agree.
Just put them in normal sections. This is why I've always got this kind of slightly antagonistic view to the direct market in comic shops. because it just ghettoizes everything.
I absolutely agree. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you. The
Yeah.
comic shops were the direct market was. I always call it the same way. Even Paul Levis doesn't agree with me, of course. And I also talk. You saved the market in a moment where it needed to be saved with creating the direct market and the comic shops and all that. That was short-term thinking.
Yes.
In the long term, you
No.
almost killed it.
Yeah, you did the both. You saved it and killed it at the same time. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are brilliant comic book shops out there, and going back, almost going back to what I was saying at the beginning when we started talking about meeting Steve Holland. His Page 45 shop is one of the best comic book shops in the country because he treats comic books, even though it's a comic book shop, he treats comic books like you walk into a bookshop.
Yep.
So it's not long boxes with it's everything shelved like a bookshop, and there's an atmosphere in it that has that kind of feel, but it's still a comic book shop. At the end of the day, he's not stocking the latest novel by X. It's still so. Don't get me wrong, that's fine because you might as well criticize record shops. You might as well criticize anything that sells one thing, one type of thing. So, but because with comics, that is all there is. That's the problem. I mean, that's why when I go to France is why it's such a great feeling, to go into something like Fnac, and see the comic book section and just think, oh, they've put bloody comic books in here. This is amazing. Or just in their little tobacco, newsagent sort of things where there's comic books there. You think, well, that's how it should be. But even in France, I'm just saying, even they're still putting them in comic book sections, even if it's more widespread than here. But it's one step better than what we've got, which is literally you go into our newsagent or a supermarket. They will have some comics, but it's preschool licensed stuff. And there might be the odd Marvel reprint title, but all shelved by your knees. So it's because it's low, it's meant to be for kids. There's that sort of feeling. So that's the worst sort of ghettoization, isn't it? And you're certainly not getting anything of any kind of interest, of quality. It's either reprints or preschool type stuff, or 2000 AD. But ironically, that's shelved at the top. So what's that saying about 2000 AD? That's still kind of unobtainable, to your general, I mean, not necessarily next to the porn, but it might as well be. So it's kind of, there's not a common ground for any of this sort of stuff. And, if we could get out of this horrible ghettoization of, no, long may comic shops reign, but we also need everyone else stocking them. And getting out of this, awful sort of, there are comic book people and there are other people that read other things.
Honestly, maybe because the market is different here and closer to France. I don't know why I'm hearing myself now. Okay, that's why I was hearing echo. I actually don't agree with her because I think comics need to be respected for what they are. If you mix them with something else, you dilute them and you're saying they are not good enough. We need to mix them so somebody goes after them because they think they're better than they actually are.
Right.
So, no, I want them to be in their own space, and the growth of the market here in Spain and in a big way in America too, with Tilly Walden and all those new creators, with Lumberjanes and everything else, it's exactly because the creators of the next generations, the new generations, have grown up eager to create their own stuff, their own personal stuff in comics language. When before that, they weren't that eager because they didn't respect it that much, because they grew up reading kids stuff. But you know what? The ones who started reading with Alan, with Dave, with Frank, with Mouse, with blah, 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 they grew up to be creators, and they didn't grow up to be creators of that genre because that was a genre. They created I wanna grow up and be a comics creator, telling a slice of life stories, telling whatever, horror, whatever. And now in Spain, the market has grown incredibly because of that new generation. Because a lot of people who would never buy a comic, Paco Roca, that generation always tells me, I love to get the usual comic reader that I always had. I love them. I know they are like friends because in every con I see them. But what I love is that now in the last 3-4 years, I have new people coming in every show. And even in book fairs, new people coming because they're realizing comic is not what they thought. And when they pick the first one and they go home and read it, they're hooked. Because that's something that comic has. When they are hooked with comics, you never go back. That's like an addiction.
Yeah.
As you all know.
Yeah. No, you're right. But all I was saying was like you still need that general sell through that you would get in a bookshop or in a supermarket or whatever. And if you can just have the ability to go in there and buy something, beyond what I described that our supermarkets would sell, that would get, and if they like it, those people would never go in a comic book shop, even if I think even...
No, but I'm not even talking about the comic book shop. I'm talking about the thing about going to a bookstore or a snack or anything and mix them and take them out of their section. No. I mean that in the bookshop, in a FNAC or similar, I want comics to be in their own section.
Oh, I see.
They deserve to be there. And it's been proven that if a big argument I've always had with them, and I mean 21 years of arguments with American publishers, is don't tell me there is no audience. The audience is there if you give them what they want to read. The problem is that you don't give them what they want to read. And Tilly Walden is selling 1 million copies per book. 1 million copies.
Yeah.
The audience is there. You just don't give them what they want. And here's been proven the same thing. As soon as that new generation, as I was saying, creates the stuff that people wants to read, they don't care if it's comics. They just go and read it.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, a really good example is something like The Snowman or When the Wind Blows. No one perceives those as comic books. But hang on, it's formatted like a European, like a French comic book. It's in panels. It's got speech balloons. Yeah, of course it's a comic. But because it's a major bestseller by a respected, author and everything, for some reason that gets put into, prestigious shelving and blah 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 blah. Everything that you'd want your book to be. So you're right, the audience is there. Exactly, because that audience would read something like that. We almost got there with something like Mouse, like you said. I think Mouse was as close as you could get with that sort of thing of being respected, and if you sat on public transport in the UK back in the 80s reading Mouse, no one would go, what the hell's that? It's like, oh, he's pretty cool, the respect you wouldn't get, obviously, if you sat there reading an issue of Superman, or whatever. So, we almost got there with it, but how we dropped the ball with it, I don't know. I think the reason we dropped the ball, there were, God, I suppose. There's multiple reasons, isn't there?
No, of course. It can't be just one. It can be an industrial thing and many others, Yeah,
God, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Marvel and DC, well, that's the problem. It's Marvel and DC, isn't it? Two companies that are 100% known for doing superheroes and nothing else. We were talking American market, obviously. That if they suddenly decided to do other things, which both of them tried to over various periods, but because they're so perceived as that's what they do, it was really hard. And of course, they didn't get them into the right markets and the different stuff, and therefore that just went into comic book shops. So it was still, you still knew Vertigo was DC. You still knew
but
Epic
the
was
point there
Marvel,
is
you
the
know?
point there is that Vertigo didn't sell on comic shops, but it sell like hotcakes on bookshops.
It
And
did, but
international markets,
obviously not enough to save the imprint, though. Obviously,
because the new people in command, and I mean after Paul was retired, didn't believe in Vertigo. Just didn't believe in it. It wasn't the thing. They wanted to push and focus on DC Comics, but the money that a lot of those kept giving and keeps giving, Watchmen and Before Vendetta are still, even if they weren't created for Vertigo, they're still their biggest sellers.
Yeah.
And internationally, I can tell you, France, Spain for sure, the Vertigo comic books always outsold Batman and Superman.
Right. But if that was the case, if literally, if these, like you say, if they didn't believe in Vertigo, but surely if the sales figures are just saying these are still selling a load, why? Any person that takes over a company, at the end of the day, it's the
question,
the bottom line, aren't they?
Yeah, but the question for those companies being owned by who they are owned, whoever it is who owns these characters?
Nah, if it's a creator-owned imprint.
No, but I mean, who in Vertigo? The question that was kept being asked is, why don't we own these characters?
Oh yeah. Why can't we do?
Why don't we own it? Why is not company owned? Why is there in 5 years, if I do nothing, the creator gets the rights back to sell it wherever he wants? Like something like Road to Perdition that could be made by somebody else because they were like, nah, I'm not doing a movie. 5 years, creator said, it's mine. And it's a huge success, or a history of violence or something like that. They kept asking, why don't I own this? And of course, Paul and Karen kept defending, we need to give them, the creators, the rights, so they do this for us, because if not, they're going to do this for somebody else.
Yeah.
But then, again, if you're a corporation, you're going to wonder, why don't I own it? I should own this, so I can do whatever I want with it. Like Sandman or Lucifer. Those are the examples they loved at Vertigo, of course, because they own them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Neil Gaiman would be even more rich, wouldn't he? If he owns
like he needs it. Anyway, I'm sorry, guys. It seems like we ignore you for like a long time. So let me go to the questions. If you're okay with that.
Questions. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So first, hi, Carolina Bensler, an amazing Spanish cover book illustrator, saying hi and saying, "I love you, Charlie." The Walking Dead fangirl moment.
Yay! Thank you.
Carolina, what can you tell us about Negan Lives?
Well, the funny thing about that is obviously, I was probably more vocal than Robert, I think, in saying never again. I truly believed that
it was done, right? I literally heard you say, I was like, nah, he will never do it again after listening to you.
I'm a man of my word. And I said, once we finish, that's it. I don't want to sort of finish. I mean, that's the worst thing to do, isn't it? You finish and then you bring it back 2 years later. It's like the death of bloody Superman, isn't it? It's just a pure... we'd be perceived as such a horrible money-making machine.
Yeah, let me be harsh, but that's like bands reuniting after 10, 15 years.
Oh,
like, you guys split.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you again. The Who are getting back together. Yeah. Like the Who, that's not the Who. This is all guys trying to play like 20-year-olds. No, they can't. It's not.
There's only two of you anyway. Yeah. But so I was quite happy, I said I'm perfectly happy to do, sketches of all the characters at conventions and blah, 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 and whatever. But, new product, that's it, we're done, we're out. We've done 16 years, boom, the end,
Like it's not enough.
Yeah. Sorry, how much more do you want, blood? But then Robert emailed me, I think, late April and said, everything that's going on. And I'd attach myself. I'd already started thinking about, I think we joked right at the beginning of this conversation about, how are you coping with the lockdown? And I always say the same thing. It's like, life hasn't changed for me. Being a freelance, I just carry on as normal. I joke about being in self-isolation, practicing it for the last 28 years, etc., etc. But the feeling I did get is, I'm sure you had it in Spain as well, but the feeling that especially in the first few months of this, where the key workers were so important, our NHS was so important, and you realise, well, I've always realised it, but you realise even more that how important these systems are and how key to their survival and all this sort of stuff is, and how proud we should be of this, especially when you compare it to America and other countries, but there I was, sat at home drawing comic books and feeling rather, and everyone goes, the best thing to be doing in helping society is just stay indoors, and you're just thinking, well, I must be better to do something else, and so I did attach myself to a couple of other, charities doing artwork, and I donated money like most people, but sometimes you feel like you want to be more proactive as opposed to just giving money, so which is also very important, don't get me wrong. But so I'd attach myself to a couple of charity things, one being what we discussed earlier, that Devoc 91, and also I've contributed a page to a thing called Tales from the Quarantine, which has been sort of put together by the amazing Fraser Brown, who's just been incredible about getting all these names to do this comic. Anyway, so I was doing my bit. Anyway, Robert sort of got in touch and just said, we need to do something, and I was, and one of the things I hadn't done directly was helping out comic book shops. The other two charity product things were more just in general. Well, actually, Tales from Quarantine is actually helping artistic, generally the theatre community primarily, because that's where Fraser comes from. But helping freelance people basically. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't done anything saving directly the comic book industry. So as soon as Robert said that, and he said, how about doing a special Negan thing? It's like, I couldn't say no. And I just thought, it would be nice to do something particularly targeted at, my industry, and the industry that's obviously given a lot to me and made me successful, etc., etc. So, I was more than happy to spend, well, it was about 3 weeks. It was an amazingly quick turnaround. Robert had written pretty much half the script already.
It was a trap.
Sorry? Totally. It was a total trap. Yeah. There's no way I was going to say no, so he knew that. And so I said, okay, So I said, so long as it's, because he started talking about doing a charity one for Black Lives Matter, and I was like, so hang on. Again, an important thing, but it's like we can't. And then he was saying, well, America's so screwed up anyway, we'd end up doing 20 issues of Walking Dead related stuff for every individual problem going. So you got to cut it somewhere. So we thought, this was perfect. It was for the industry, we're willingly giving our time, and it was a great thing to do. And so it was a one-off. It's something I thought, to coin a cliche, in these unprecedented times, it calls for unprecedented action, I suppose. So therefore, Negan Lives has been created, and I hope it goes a long way to helping out everybody. Our small, minute little contribution to the crisis.
Nah, not minute. Every contribution is good. It's like a lot bigger than mine, which is this show, which I created exactly for the reason to try to get people closer to you. And people ask me why, and I like, this is one of those things you think I need to do it. I just need to do something. It needs to be done. We are all confined. I want people to know that creators are also confined and their side of things and how they see life, and to get both sides closer. Sometimes I am really, really pleased by the fans' reactions to creators, and I always tell them in conventions that I run, or I have you as a guest too. I always say that like they're fucking human as you are. They have a life. They have problems. You see the page, but you need to see the human being behind it. And they have the same problems, the same fears, the same everything you have. Even if you just think about them as what you would like to see on the page, which is what makes me being as detached from Star Wars as I am now. Because nobody can do Star Wars because it's owned by the fans. They think they own it.
Yeah.
But in a way, when I talk about creators, I always say this is not an interview. This is me trying to get people to know you better, respect you better. And when they see the page, that they don't only see Charlie Adlard the name, they see Charlie Adlard the person they met through this.
Right.
So makes them closer to you. I think that's needed in this day and age. So your contribution is much bigger than mine, but it's trying to do something too.
We're all doing. I think the good thing, the positive thing that's come out of all of this is I think it's made everyone sort of want to do something. It's almost by the fact we're all told to do nothing.
Yes,
made us all want to do something. So there's a kind of a real irony there, which is good. My big fear, again, just to go slightly off track again, is I hope to God we don't all. I've got a big fear. I think we will, but I hope to God we don't just all revert to square one once this is all over again. Being, the world revert back to how it was 6 months ago, however months ago it will be eventually. And
I hope not. I hope not that extremes are going to become more extreme. The hooligans, to call them in a way, the right-wing ultras are going to be more right-wing ultras. But the other day, talking to Raka, I said exactly that. They can't stop the future, even if they want. And second, normally when they yell, we just sit back. I was like, you know what, fuck it. They'll stop yelling. But now we are as pissed as they are. So we are responding. So when this is over, if they expect us to sit back, no, we are not. We are going to defend NHS, Sanidad. We are going to give them a fight.
Yeah, I hope so.
We are as pissed as they are, and normally we are not the ones being pissed. We are the ones that are calm and say, relax, and that's why they win. But we are not relaxed now. We are fucking pissed. So we are not going to let them. That's why I think it's going to happen.
Oh, I hope so. I hope it does just engender change. It would be brilliant if it did. Yeah. Got my fingers crossed. So.
Okay, back to the people. Javier Meson says, "Hi Charlie, what has it been like working for Ablaze at Vampire State Building?"
Well, it's, to be honest, working for Ablaze is I haven't really worked with them on much because obviously it was originally done for Soleil in France, so that's the original publisher of Vampire State. It was my second original bande dessinée for Soleil. Funny enough, I mean, I have connections. Yeah, I did a book about 8 years ago called Breath of the Wendigo for Soleil. That was my first French comic book. But obviously Delcourt, who now owns Soleil, have been the publisher of The Walking Dead right from the get-go. So I've had a relationship with Delcourt from that, from that long ago. And Delcourt are probably my favourite comic book publisher. I'm talking, worldwide. This is, yes, even more so than Image, because as I've said before, I'm no secret of my love for French comic books, and one of the reasons I love French comic books is predominantly the formatting of them and the quality of them. And I'm not talking about just story quality or art quality. I mean, the art quality does go up definitely another notch with French comic books, but just the paper quality, the way
the paper design idea, the idea behind
it's just so much more respectful to what we do, I suppose. So I've always been a big supporter of Delcourt, and up until obviously the end of The Walking Dead, I was quite happy to. It's easy enough for me to come over to France once or twice a year, so I'd always say I will do something for Delcourt at least once a year, and I became a fairly regular fixture. Pretty much, apart from Thought Bubble and the Lakes in the UK, the only other regular convention I would do every year was Angoulême. So I think I've been to Angoulême, without missing one, probably the last 6 or 7 years, I think now. And I used to go as a fan back in the 90s, so I've been, double figures easily now. But VSB, Vampire State Building, was totally with Soleil. But I think Ablaze have done a really nice job. I'm looking forward to seeing. Apparently the trade, or I think they've done a hardcover of it, is coming out soon, so I'll be interested to see that. That'll be lovely. I think they've done a great job. I mean, it is funny how, this is no criticism at all, but I just find it quite funny how Ablaze just got very obsessed with variant covers. A variant cover seems to be such a big thing at the minute with the American comic book industry that I lost count of how many variant covers Ablaze had done of Vampire State. Obviously, fair enough, it's to sell more books. But I did. It was quite amusing to see all these loads and loads of different covers coming in. Yeah, good fun.
Felipe González Hernández asks, how do you remember Astronauts in Trouble? I like your storytelling a lot on those adventures.
Oh, right, great. Wow, you're one of the 5 people that read it.
Then I am number 6.
Hey, excellent, well done. With complete fondness. I mean, I remember. Oh God, how old is Astronauts? Probably if I've been in the industry for nearly, it's probably getting on for more like 30 years now. I don't know, over 20 years ago, I must have met Larry Young, and it was at San Diego, and.
I was going to say 24, 25 years. No,
really?
So 94, 95, 96.
Really that old? God's sake. Right, okay.
No. Let me check. You keep talking.
Yeah.
Because now I'm doubting myself.
No, fair enough. Anyway, I think, I can't remember what I was doing, literally. I think I was just wandering around, because I used to go, save up basically to go to San Diego every year as a mission to get work, and I think I was just wandering through the halls, and I can't remember. I used to have an agent, believe it or not, as well in the States, and I think they might have approached my agent at San Diego. Anyway, I met them at this one San Diego, and Larry's a lovely guy. And his partner Mimi as well, both brilliant people. And he just said, "I'm doing this book called Astronauts in Trouble." It's a bit of a slight Walking Dead story in a lot of ways, because he said the first 3 issues have already been drawn, but Matt Smith, the original artist, couldn't, for whatever reason, I can't remember now. Probably again, he didn't have time or whatever. Is unable to draw the last 2. Are you interested? And he said, I'll pay you, which was obviously music to my ears. So, it was a case of when you're a journeyman artist, you sort of just accept the job if you're not busy. So I said, yeah, sure. Which led to a really good, sort of working relationship with Larry. Well, not just we were good friends. I mean, we've kind of lost touch over the years. I think Larry's kind of pretty much out of the industry anyway now. But we were good friends for a while, and we've not fallen out. It's just one of those things you just lose touch. I mean, if he got in touch with me, it'd be great to hear from him, So of course, then we did a sequel, and we both had a mutual love. Funny enough, we did talk, which we never did, and never will do now at all. And but we wanted to do a comic book version of UFO, the Jerry Anderson TV show, because we were both massive Jerry Anderson fans at the time. Well, still are. And UFO, for people listening that don't know what that is, was a British science fiction show by the creator of Thunderbirds. But it was his first live action TV show. I think it was 71, came out. Just one season. And it's about a bunch of aliens in UFOs that keep invading Earth, and Earth have a defensive system called Shadow set up for various levels of craft, because obviously Jerry Anderson is famous for basically his vehicles. So there were the interceptors on the moon, there was the Shadow mobiles, which are these tanks, there was this satellite, which was an early warning system, there was Skydiver, which was the coolest submarine in the world. It was great. Well, it wasn't great. It was pretty awful, actually. I remember rewatching it ages ago, and it was quite, it's 70s. It was 70s.
Let's just say it didn't age well.
It hasn't aged well. Anything. I love it. The fact that they're all sitting around the space station, because they got a moon base. They're all sitting around the moon base smoking. It's just brilliant. But anyway, it was the 70s. And we were going to do that together, and I'd have loved to have done something like that, even though I hate drawing spaceships. I love spaceships, but I hate drawing them. But and of course, then the last I really heard from Larry was when we did Image reprinted them.
Yeah, in 2016.
Years back, and I did. Funny enough, talking about digital artwork a while back, that was my first foray. Those were the first things I did.
Yeah.
As a pure digital artwork.
I talk to Larry fairly regularly on Facebook, because he's around a lot on Facebook.
Yeah. And
I'm seeing here that Space 1959 was published.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, of course, that was our homage to...
that was published March 2000.
Right, that was the last thing we did together. Yeah, Space 1959. Yeah. Yeah,
and the other ones a bit before 1999, etc. Well, anyway, that's enough. That's enough.
But I really enjoyed Larry's writing, and to be honest, that would be one thing would be quite fun to revisit. I mean, funny enough, the deal that I came to with Larry to do those covers, because I did, obviously, I think it was 12 or 13 issues, I think, when Image reprinted them as again. The deal I said to Larry was like, don't pay me money for them. Make me a 50% ownership of Astronauts in Trouble. So we're now co-creators of that. I mean, I don't know whether we'll ever sell the rights. I think it'd be a great thing to do. It's just got that it's like Vampire State Building. It's such a great title. It would almost sell it on the title alone.
Yeah, the title sells the book. That's why I originally bought it, honestly. I just read the title and I was like, that sounds amazing. Get it.
It's just a lovely, and the Astronauts in Trouble. It's just I don't know how do you describe it. It's not dangerous. It's not earth shattering. It's not like the end of the world sort of thing. It's just Astronauts in Trouble. It's kind of just makes it sound much more fun. Astronauts in trouble. They're in a bit of trouble. So
Pedro de Mercader asks, I'll find quite interesting how The Walking Dead turned into a Western. But looking at it, there's always been some iconography there. Were you inspired by any Western in particular to do that?
Oh, wow. Interesting question.
Yeah, because I expel them of these videos if they don't ask interesting question, and they know it. I just want them.
You kick them off. So So there's no how you doing, Robert, first meet.
Exactly. No, and if there's that, they know I literally ignore the question.
Right, okay.
It's like, same one he's answered 35 million times already.
Yeah. Just look that one up on the internet. Yeah.
It's like,
Google that one. Well, the short answer is, I mean, it's an interesting question. It is no, not directly. To be honest, again, being British, the iconography of Westerns doesn't hit me as much as if I was American. Again, it's a question you could ask Robert. See if he's got a different answer. But yeah,
I quite don't think that I'm gonna get Robert to do one of this. You know what? No, I don't see it. Anyway, let's go.
So I mean, when I was a kid, Westerns totally didn't interest me, to be honest. Like I said before, I was into science fiction, fantasy, horror later. So that's what entertained me up until I was, in my late teens, early 20s. I broadened my mind to other movies, So yeah, Westerns were not a thing. I used to sort of enjoy the odd cavalry movie because I like costumes. I like uniforms when I was little, so I enjoyed the cavalry costumes. I always remember those. But I'm totally aware of the final issue feels like a Western. Just in terms of how the storyline kind of evolved to that point, and how just how society would become, because obviously without technology, without the basic things like electricity, etc., they would have to revert back to a past time. And the Western, really, something set in the States is, so they're riding around on horses, for God's sake. You're straight away into, especially in America. America hasn't got knights in shining armor. We haven't got medieval stuff. So you see, you're heading straight into Western territory. The visual aspect of it straight away, and everything about Eugene getting the railway to meet in the middle of joining up the two main sort of communities and all that sort of stuff is pure Western imagery. In fact, I'll make no bones about it. I Google image searched, the two, the north, train line from the East Coast, train line from the West Coast meeting. I literally use that I can't say the word now. Iconography, totally, with that. Because it just so suited. It would sort of look like that. That would be the level of tech they would probably be dealing with. So yeah. I wish I could answer that question in more profound way, but unfortunately,
no, brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Felipe, why do I keep my echo? Well, anyway. Felipe Gonzalez, I love your work with Joe Casey on Rock Bottoms. Was it conscious decision to draw it without shadows? It was amazing. I also loved Cold Flesh, which is for me such an amazing homage to the spirit.
Oh wow! Okay, thank you.
I says, but sorry. He also asks. I am talking about the composition on your pages and stories on storytelling.
Yeah,
reminds me of Will Eisner's Spirit a lot.
That's right. Well, one thing we did on Code Flesh was self-consciously do the title page, incorporate the title Code Flesh somehow into like Will Eisner did into his splash page or whatever. Yeah, Rock Bottom. Well, for starters, I think Rock Bottom is probably one of the best things Joe's ever written. And I was very lucky to be part of that. It was truly heartfelt. And even though it's got a very downbeat ending, it's also an ending that's full of hope as well, which I thought was beautiful. Beautiful way to end the book. It's like the characters, and he's on an inevitable decline to death. That is a given. There's no way. I think by the time you get halfway through the book, you realise that's inevitable. Some endings don't have to be surprise endings. They just have to be the right ending. If I just use a very unrelated analogy, it's like the ending of Breaking Bad, for instance. It's not a big surprise that that ending is that ending. I won't say, just in case no one's seen it, but it's the right ending.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a total perfect ending to that. He just, that's beautiful ending, but it's not like the end that makes you go, oh my God, like that, because it just works. And you kind of.
I just thought, like you, like that's fitting.
That's fitting. Yeah, it's just perfect, just perfectly done. So, but the way Joe wrote it, obviously for Rock Bottom, just worked beautifully for it. In terms of why there was no blacks, yes, it was a total conscious decision. I actually wanted to take away my, I suppose for want of a better word, comfort blanket, which was the blacks. Because as much as I go on about it being a great design element and an atmosphere generator, etc., what it also is very good at is hiding your mistakes. Quite often all you have to do is draw half a face because you can hide the rest in shadow. It's perfect. You ask most people who use a lot of blacks, and I remember having this exact same conversation with Jock a while back, and we both admitted that we use black a lot just because we can't be bothered to draw that bit. And it works as a great time-saving device as well. Yes,
guys, you cannot. This is like Vegas, okay? what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You cannot tell this to anybody else.
So I thought if I take away, and it was weird. It also referred back to a comment a friend of mine made about a cover I did years previous. Well, not years previously, probably at the time, but just a few years previously. I did a few covers for Marvel UK, because one thing they did do, even though it was all reprints, the editor would commission covers by various artists, and the editor at the time was a really good friend of mine, and I did this one cover. I think it was a Wolverine cover, and whatever was on the cover, Wolverine was just line drawings or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember his comment saying you should do more of that. Yeah, just the line drawings. And at the time, having gone to Angoulême a lot, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Nicolas de Crécy, the artist, who I remember buying a book of his, and it wasn't his usual color work. It was just line drawings. And I just loved his sort of line, just that sort of very kind of almost weirdly shaky, confident yet shaky line. Yeah. It was beautiful, worked really nice. I thought, I'm going to try doing something like this. So when Rock Bottom came along, it just seemed like the right project for it. It was just, which goes sort of back to what I was saying about working digitally. And you said you do that exclusively. Now it's like, no, I do it for what it suits the project. So Rock Bottom suited doing it in this way. And then I came up with the idea of just adding the element of the texture to the guy who's turning to stone. And I think if I had more black in it, it would take away from using that texture. So that was amazing. It was an interesting way in working, because basically what I had to do was make sure my pencils were more accurate. That was an interesting process, because I was just doing it in line work, and like I say, I couldn't hide stuff. I was working more in, my pencils had to be a lot more precise, and obviously the inking didn't take as long, because it was literally, I was for once just tracing the pencil lines in just a single pen, and that was it, and that was the page done. So it would still probably take me the same amount of time to do a page, but double the length on the pencils and half the length on the inks, And things like I'd have to do more backgrounds, because you're not using blacks, etc., the page just didn't look as full without backgrounds. So, there's a lot more backgrounds to put in, and it was more of a slice of life story as well. So, locations mattered, set in, modern day LA, so all this sort of mattered, getting all that right, So there was it was a very different way of drawing, and it's similar to when I did White Death, when I did that charcoal in chalk. It's probably something I'll never revisit again, but it was an interesting experiment which hopefully worked.
Yeah. Chris knows, question to both of you. Me? Why? Anyway, what do you think a publisher is looking for in a comic pitch today?
Oh, well, I think you've got to go first off. You've got to tell which publisher, because certain different publishers are looking for different things, aren't they? If you go to Marvel and DC, there's pretty much one thing you can only, propose to them. That would be a superhero story. And as we were saying beforehand, since they seem to have washed their hands clean of creator-owned stuff, it would have to be a proposal for their characters, which is fine.
Absolutely, that's what they do. This is not that wasn't on my side before. In case you understood it that way, guys, it wasn't a complaint or nothing against Marvel or DC. That's what they do.
No, but you go in with your eyes wide open. That's what I would say. You don't start moaning about them changing your concept because it doesn't agree with the character. Because at the end of the day, it's their character.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a beginner writer or artist or whatever, you haven't really.
They won't let me break a Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. So you haven't really got much of a leg to stand on. So, obviously, if you go, no, it's funny enough. It's the same with 2000 AD. Well, 2000 AD in a lot of ways, as much as I sort of respect 2000 AD and its history, 2000 AD is even worse because they, apart from things like Judge Dredd, they want you to come up with an originated idea of which then they'll own.
Yeah.
So, at least with Marvel and DC, you're going in and proposing a proposal for a character that's already established. Obviously, with publishers like Image, it's a completely different ball game. You generally, if you're starting off, you have to go in with your complete concept with pages and art and everything, and they'll want you to finish it all. Present it to them as a finished comic. I think when you get to a certain level, they'll do certain things for you as well. It's like you scratch their back, they'll scratch yours, etc.
It's not the same being Johnny Wakanda and getting there with nothing to get the Greg Rucka or somebody like that. Of course, if Image is or Charlie, they see the name. Of course, they're interested in rubbing your back.
Yes.
If you're a newbie, don't expect them to treat you like you have a career behind you.
Exactly. But I suppose the Image deal is in the last 10, 15 years is the new sort of thing that this question, which was basically about has anything changed. I think that's probably the one thing that has changed more than anything is the prospect that you could probably get a broader audience, a wider audience for your creator-owned book if you can afford to do it. That is, as a newbie. But there's better chances of being able to get that in print nowadays than perhaps 10, 15 years ago. Or arguably better chance of making some money out of it as well. I mean, never a guarantee. Creator-owned stuff is never a guarantee.
Absolutely not.
You're going in, shall we say, unpaid, and all you're relying on is royalties. There's plenty of creative books that don't make enough royalties to pay, which is obviously more of a problem for an artist than a writer, just on the time factor that it takes to draw a book as opposed to write a book. So it's going in with your eyes wide open to these sort of different things. But apart from that, I don't think there's much changed in. I think I'll tell you what has changed more so in the last 15 years is a lot more people are going in, shall we say, with the idea of doing a Hollywood IP as their comic book project.
Yeah.
Perhaps that long, 15 years ago, people can see that this can be a thing. So that sort of Hollywood pitch is now quite a big thing. As much as I love Image Comics, I do see that a lot now in the books that they do. That kind of this meets this. Sort of
Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Oh my God, that reads exactly like a movie. That writer wrote it to be blah blah blah. Yeah, that's
I mean, I'll hold my hands up. I've done it myself. Vampire State Building was the two reasons initially that I agreed to do Vampire State Building. Well, three reasons. That's the Spanish Inquisition. Three reasons. Was creator owned, great title, and Hollywood IP. Sorry, that was the only. Sometimes, even I can be mercenary. And it was the third. The third reason was also, was definitely a factor in it. You could see that as the Hollywood pitch type thing. But there's a lot more of that in comic books now, which I find a bit not disappointing, distracting. I think.
Yeah.
Is the word. You just think, okay. There's the thing that, you always go, oh, there's X, there's Y, and then there's the Z bit, which is the bit you just think, the Z bit spoiled it for me because that's the bit that they think they can sell, beyond the concept. The bit they've almost shoehorned into, the plot to make it a more, sort of mid-budget range Hollywood movie or something like that.
Yeah. So since you asked me also, Chris, is the question was, he clarifies he was talking about Image. Okay, yes, so we did it. What do you think a publisher is looking for in a good comic pitch today? My answer is that is good and unique.
Yeah.
Because million ones that are mediocre and sound and look like something else that's been done a million times. So if you don't have anything unique for starters, and that is objectively good, you're wasting the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's the reality. Especially with a company like Image. Okay. Carolina asks, how do you feel about The Walking Dead now that it's over? After this long time working on it. Do you miss it? I don't think so. Do you like to work in a new series? No, I don't. Okay. Would you like to work in a new series in the Walking Dead world with other characters or places?
No.
I knew the answer.
16 years is a long time to be a regular month in, month out penciler and inker on a book. We wanted to go out on a high. I certainly didn't leave when we finished it. I certainly didn't finish it with the thought in my head that I've really had enough. We could have carried on. It made sense to finish there. We believe it or not, the conversation about finishing it started about 4 years previous to finishing it. So Robert and I have been talking about this for a long time. The trick is, to make it feel like a surprise to everybody. So that was our biggest coup.
That was an amazing coup. Nobody literally expected it. That was really.
There you go. Well, that was it. It was to make everyone suddenly think, oh my God, did they think about this last week? It's been in the works for ages.
Which is the funniest thing about explaining people how comics work, because they are like, no, comics don't work that way. They couldn't. Even if they thought last minute, that could have meant 6 or 7 months ago.
Oh,
right?
But this was literally 4 years ago we started talking about this, and literally that 4 years, I was on a count. I was thinking of the countdown, going, only this many issues left. Every time I'd finish an issue, only this many issues left. But I'll tell you what, it was the last issue, because I came back to inking, which, no disrespect to Stefano, who inked brilliantly my stuff for many years. The reason we got Stefano on at the beginning was because we went bi-monthly, so we had to do 2 issues a month, and I'm fast, but I'm not that fast to do pencil and inking. So it was, at the time, it was a convenience thing. And then afterwards, we said, should we keep him on? Robert said that question, and I said, yeah, because I can do other stuff. It gives me time to do other stuff. All that time I was drawing The Walking Dead, I was never as pleased with the pages as I was when I was inking them. That's no disrespect to Stefano, because I've told Stefano this as well. It's just I'm my own best inker. It's as simple.
Of course, and it's also
Yeah,
it's not complete. If you're used to ink from a very young age, it does never feel like it's completely yours if you don't ink it. It's just as simple as that.
Absolutely. So I ended up, being slightly frustrated for all those years, because I didn't look at that artwork thinking the finished artwork. It wasn't me, And so when I came back to inking it that last issue, I loved doing that last issue. I do think it's the best single issue Robert's written of Walking Dead. I mean, to be honest, it's not me sort of, singing, patting our own back here, but I was slightly disappointed we weren't Eisner nominated because I really thought that's such a good issue that surely it'll be recognised in award ceremonies. But no, anyway, because it was that good from both of us. I'll say that, but anyway, when I inked that, Rick in the rocking chair, there was a sort of regret that we were finishing, probably because I was so enjoying inking it again. I'm glad it was a 72-page issue because it gave me a real nice chunk to ink as well. It wasn't like just doing one issue and that was it, or one regular issue. So After the end of it, after this literal countdown in my head going, I only need this many issues left, that final issue, it's like, oh, my life's a bit empty without it now, Thankfully, I had Vampire State Building to finish off with, and the new project I'm working on with Robbie Morrison now called Heretic, which I've been doing ever since, on and off, in between other charitable stuff. But it was at the end of the day, it was like, it did leave a bit of a hole, like I say, whether it was just because I was enjoying inking so much and all of a sudden. So it was kind of pleasurable to come back to doing Negan after all those years. Months, not years. It does feel like that long ago, because obviously I finished drawing it in April, and then obviously the issue was released in July. So, for me, I'd finished drawing the book, we're talking a year, 3 months now ago. So it's quite a distance between it now. But I still say this now, even though Negan Lives is an anomaly. Wait for me to eat my words 3 years down the line or something, I don't know. But no, I will never do another series. Rob and I are moving on. There's not saying we won't work together again.
This chapter of your life with that book is
exactly. It won't be Walking Dead. That's the main thing.
Okay.
I think I've got time for one more question because we haven't been going for 2.5 hours.
No, I was going to say in another different way. One more question because I need to pee.
And it's dinner time for me. I can hear it getting.
Okay, so last one. Felipe González Hernández, many thanks for the establishment. It was a good reading and very imaginative mix with British flavor. How did it come? How did you receive the offer for that project? Ian Edgington made really good characters and backup stories.
All right, wow, God, these are great questions because these are. I'm remembering all these things from the past. I honestly can't remember the initial conversation about the establishment. I was basically paired with Ian. I knew Ian, before from just knowing him at conventions and things like that. So we knew each other. That was for sure. But I honestly can't remember what happened. It was just one of those things. They obviously knew my stuff and thought I'd be a good fit with Ian for the book. And of course, obviously, we're riding a bit of a crest of a wave in terms of because obviously authority had come out and the monarchy was doing fairly well, so the establishment should have been the next big one. You could say we were the one that sunk the whole ship. I don't know. But, I loved Ian's concept, especially the first few issues, because he wanted to do sort of an alternate history, inverted commas, of British genre material. So, we were putting in loads of references to, sort of particular genre stuff. And I love the team. The team were great. It was really inventive. Yeah, it was so inventive. It spiraled into a bit more of, Who's Who in the Wildstorm universe, which, and let's face it, the Wildstorm universe isn't the most interesting universe, which is a shame. I don't think that was Ian's fault, to be honest. I think Ian was sort of instructed to do that. But the first, especially that first sort of 4 issues, the characters go to a hotel and it just happens to be, and I remember drawing, the Fawlty Towers Hotel, including the little, the sign with where they put the letters on the wrong way around. It was reading Fatty Owls or something like that, little things like that. And I remember getting in the car and driving up to a Welsh seaside town to take loads of, because this is before Google image search, folks, to take loads of photographs of a seaside town, which is where the aliens invade. So I got ref for that and everything, specific. That's probably the only time I actually went on a long journey to get specific ref in my whole career. Everything else is Google image search. So including Heretic, which is the most research heavy thing I've ever done, because it's set in 16th century Antwerp. But good old Google image search, I don't have to go to Antwerp. Actually, it'd probably be detrimental going to Antwerp, because I don't think there's much of the 16th century Antwerp.
Exactly, that's what I'm going to say.
Exactly.
You probably won't find it if you go. So.
So it'd been a pointless visit anyway. That's all I can really say. Is it was great fun to do. It's just a shame we were instructed to go elsewhere with it, and I think that was kind of
That I honestly think that killed the book.
Yeah, I think it did.
Those few issues were their own thing. You guys were set in a really specific direction that I was loving, and when it turned, I was like, okay, editorial mandate, boost the sales, put all these characters here, and I was like, I'm going. Honestly, I was like, I'm not interested anymore.
It all got a bit cosmic, didn't it? And I liked its almost kind of small town mentality. And it was at the beginning. It was a nice contrast to the authority of the
absolutely. That's what I love the most, because you have the big scope with one, and the concentrated stories with the other one.
Yeah, exactly. So but you know what? Yeah, corporations are like. They see the success of one thing, they want more of the same. So because we weren't doing more of the same, it was like I say, it was probably the book that killed the whole concept. Because we were the failure. I think we were perceived as the failure over, obviously, the other two, And if we were the success, there would have obviously been more establishments and monarchies and authorities and various other E's, out there. So, we did. We killed the franchise. Woohoo!
You know what? It needed to be killed anyway. Well, so we gotta leave. Last thing. Stanley Man, a big fan, says, can you give a shout out to Bertie? Hello, Bertie.
Hello, Bertie.
That's it. Okay. And with that, he needs to go have dinner. I need to save my, because it's gonna explode, because I need to pee. So with that, we leave you. Please don't cut, because I want to say proper goodbye to you, Charlie, before you left for dinner. And to all of you, thank you so much. Thank you, Charlie, for being here. It's been amazing.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
And to all of you, back on Monday, if my, thing doesn't explode, with Mr. John Bogdanov. Take care. Have a great weekend. We're off for the weekend in like 3